So this is a graphic that is called the Orbis Imaginalis. Now this is a combination that I made up. And I created this graphic when I was with my mom, who's on her threshold between her worlds. And the idea is that the orbis is basically like a circle, and the imagination is like the circle of imagination. And so instead of imagination being this abstract thing, it's like, oh, the imagination, oh, I'll use my imagination. No, imagination's here all the time. And when you work with image, which is in the root of imagination, image, it's right there, then you start to change how you relate with your imagination. Notice the magi and imagination, like this word is sacred. So Orbis Imaginalis, so the circle of your imagination. So I invite you to just take your finger and just draw a circle around yourself, your body, and your field. And it's like, this is all my imagination. Like I am able to inhabit all of this space. I am not prevented from any space here. This is my place. This is the circle of my imagination. And when I say my magic word, I'm asking my consciousness to unite. And when I think about the red thread, I'm allowing myself to be connected to a greater circle. And when I choose to sit upon the seat of my muse chair, I am activating that creativity and that relationship. So everything that we've done are parts of the Orbis Imaginalis. And I say the word behold, behold, because it's like, wow, this is big stuff. And so we have on the one side the seat of the muse, her chair, her throne, and then we have on the other side a drawing indicating that the imaginal, the realm of your imagination, exists on the equal sign between the mythical and the logical. So that which is known, seen, heard, logical, that which is unknown, unseen, in the liminal and story, mythical. The imaginal is like the part of you which resides in both. It's the name you can use to talk about the straddling of the thresholds. That middle place, you are in the middle place. This is part of a larger teaching from a larger class called Ritual, but the archetypal has to do with the identity and how the archetypal energies and patterns in the ancients are informing your archetype, and to actually start taking responsibility for that. And we do that in classes like Artifact. And then the ecological, which is your connection to the earth and the earth patterns. So this is about this awareness of straddling the thresholds. So that's the graphic. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you so much to our beautiful team here supporting. So let's bring this circle to completion. What is a threshold time? Do you think you're in a threshold time right now? Are you between worlds? Are you between selves? Are you between relationships? What is a threshold time? Many of us feel we're in a threshold time right now. And we feel a sense of a glimpse of being able to create a kind of greater unity by being aware that we are in a threshold time, threshold crossing over into a place where you can actually see the threshold and be on both sides at once. That's the straddle piece. Threshold between the mythical and logical, the unknown and the known, the unseen and the seen, between energy and matter, between the muse and the critic. These are all continuums that are often occurring as duality or polarized or paradoxical, but actually they're spectrums of potentially one thing. Energy and matter, it's an equal sign, right? There's an equal sign because they're equal. Your body right here, this flesh over here is moving differently, but it's still you. Your skin is the edge between those worlds is the equal sign. And when you practice intentional creativity, you're intentionally straddling the threshold. Think of these things as different forms. Like on the movement, there's motion and stillness. There's a lot of motion, there's a lot of stillness, and there's everything in between. There's a spectrum. Color, we talked about. Temperature. And then let's visit the spectrum of beliefs for a moment. Because your beliefs about what you think is so, about spirituality, about creator, about earth, about mythologies, about what's above and what's below, your beliefs, what if they're like that too, which is where we started? What if you could get off of a fixation of a how it isness and move into the uncertainty? What if your beliefs have a spectrum too, like from hot to cold, like from red to green to blue? What if there's a variation? What if there's a rich diversity of possibilities along your beliefs that you've only been looking at 1 inch of it, and many acting as if that is how it is? It probably isn't that. Sorry, but it just probably isn't that, because then every single other person who doesn't think that is wrong, and it doesn't work like that. What if your beliefs exist on this spectrum of potential and you could start to look in both directions? What if you could say, wow, I believe in a creator. I have no idea what that means, and it might not be so, but it could be. Can I worship that and not know? Can I worship creator but not assert that it is so, or that anyone should think the way that I think? Can I stop thinking about others as if what they think, if it's different from what I think, that I have a truth and they don't? I mean, how different could our world be if we recognize we're at a threshold time where the fixation on beliefs and knowings and even stands actually is dividing instead of uniting? But we're not talking about dissolving duality. We're not saying choose this, not that. We're not saying it's only this or it's only that. We're saying there's a lot of choices in there. There's a lot of spectrums of potential, and we want to explore all of them. Is red better than blue? Is hot better than cold? No, we know that. So why are we asserting that to a lot of our dogmatic, persistent beliefs and then allowing institutionalized behaviors to insist on how something is when it isn't? What if you could allow there to be uncertainty and still be certain that you have a relationship with whatever it is? Because we don't really know. And that's the only thing I know. I know that we don't really know. And I know that creativity is a way to be with the unknowing intimately. And that intentional creativity is a way for me to take active, sacred responsibility with my relationship with myself, my earth, the ancestors, my land that's around where I am. And I say my personal relationship with that. My relationships out here in the world. How can I straddle the threshold of my own being to be where I am and be where you are? We're doing it right now. And so today, Straddle the Threshold is about awakening alchemical imagination. So everything we just talked about is a kind of alchemical imagination. It's something that we're lighting up with the fire of our intention to get a look at it. We're exploring the intersection of myth, image, duality, and the muse. That's what we've been doing. We've done metacognitive drawing to integrate the material. I told you we would learn about intentional creativity and why it should matter to you. And why does it matter to you? A lot of you have been with us for a long time. Maybe you can just put in the chat, how long have we been connected with intentional creativity or with me? Like just see, put some years or months, or maybe there's like some first timers, like first day, 3 years, 7 years, 7 years, 1 year, 10 months, not long, 5 years, 7 years. Just in January, since past the summer, about 5 years, from 2006, 1 year, 10 years, 5 years, 5 months, almost 1 year. since 2011. First time. Welcome, first timers. Woohoo! So we've been here for a long time and some of us are brand new. But why does this matter? Like, why does it matter that we spend this time and talk about this? I feel like intentional creativity is the medicine for all souls, and all of our ancestors and every place in the entire world used to do this. And when we stopped creating this way, whether we were weaving a basket or laying out a feast or building a temple or making clothing, everything we did, all of our ancestors did with a kind of intention and a mindfulness about resources, access, and sharing, because you had to. And the moment when we began to assert progress, industrialization, and put profit over humans and creatures and plants, that's a moment where intentional creativity ceases in every culture. That's a mass production moment. That's a, I'm going to bottle this water and put my label on it moment. That's a moment where we're going to bring in that there's a supreme masculine is a supreme over feminine. We're gonna build it into stories, and we're gonna build it into images, and so that people won't know that how it was. It's gonna take a few thousand years, but eventually that will be in place, and they won't even know. And then if they do, we'll do everything we can to keep this in place. This is how it's been, y'all. And there comes a point where we start to wake up and we say, wait a minute, I don't want any part of that. And then there's a recovery and a healing. Intentional creativity is like a return to something that your ancestors did before things got how they got to where they are now. So intentional creativity is a mending of the removal of sacredness from our relationship with earth and each other and materials and resources. It's a mending and a uniting within our own soul of how that fragmentation, how those internalized systems have fractured within us. It's the literal practice from a synaptic junction and a neurological perspective that allows your brain and your body to start to heal those fragmentations, to see something that you thought was separate. You thought black was separate from white. You thought hot was separate from cold. You thought his was separate from hers. And you start to see them as a continuum. That's a mending. Intentional creativity helps to rewire those perceived separations that you've held and that many systems, organizations, and media have been using to keep in place to keep us divided. And it's not how it can be. And so intentional creativity is recovery. It's also joy and connection with our creativity. It's also what we do in our community at Musea. If you're not a member and you want to join our global museum centering on women's work, you're welcome to join us. We do this all the time, right? I mean, we do this all the time. We get together and we create and we connect and we work together. It matters because people are hurting and intentional creativity heals. It matters because impossible moments can be moved by this. It matters because practices of healing, medicine, and psychotherapy are ready for a change. And this, in addition to those healing modalities, makes an exponential difference. The shamans, doctors, and psychotherapists and healers in our community who start to include simple things like what we did today, exponential results. Can't imagine how they didn't use it before. This isn't new, and this isn't our brand. The only thing that's new is we just feel like it's so important that we're centering on it and inviting you and all of your family and all of your relationships to begin to create with you. So why should it matter to you? I've just told you why it matters to me, because it actually works to mend and bring joy. Today we worked with learning metacognitive drawing to amplify awareness. We did that. And now you have that tool. That belongs to you. You can do that anytime. You can do it with people. And the ideas will just come to you. Someone's sitting across from you and they're in a moment of despair and you're like, hey, let's do a drawing. And while you're getting out the paper, you're thinking of the idea. And then you have the idea and you just be like, okay, well, what does that feel like? Okay, it feels like this. Okay, now let's draw the antidote drawing. Okay, that feels like this. It's that simple and that available. And it belongs to all humans. We've discovered how mythic imagination works in tandem with image making. We did not explore the impacts of the hidden archetype ethos operating in culture and identity. Well, maybe we did a little bit. We touched on that a little bit. Curating your consciousness, we've talked about navigating this physical body and the space around you. Embracing teachings inherent in duality and how to work with it in your art. We created a sense of place, essential when learning connectivity in a virtual construct, like an online class or community. I told you about Musea. And now the final piece is to answer the call of the storyteller. I did it, team. I followed my agenda. Woo-hoo, I get a gold star in my third eye, as one of our children in our community says. So the invitation to storyteller. So this is so essential for those of us who are awakening and coming into presence, that we become the storytellers of the future. And for some of us, that's literally writing myths, which is what I'm doing. And for some of us, that's changing our dynamic and our love relationships, or a relationship with each other, or for many of us, working in reparation and acknowledgement work with Indigenous cultures where we live. The storyteller is going to take on a different quality for each one of you. But when that critic and that muse can come together, and you begin to hear a more true voice, you will discover the storyteller who has this capacity to what we call the mother tongue, which is like this inherent way to speak, to create, to draw, to know. You have so much access. You have so much essential information. You have so much story and teachings and gifts. And if you do not express them, they remain internalized and can't progress. Self-expression is that invitation to orate, to speak, to dance, to sing, to paint, to write, to draw, like to act in self-expression, and to be the one speaking that into being, whether that's out loud or within yourself, like to actually occupy the position that you are happening inside of a story, that you have a story to tell, that you can navigate the stories of your past when you're in your truest story voice, and that together we're going to create a different culture with us being storytellers. We can regurgitate the old stories just so far, and then there comes a point where we're like, you know what? That is a construct. I refuse that. You know what? That is an enforced illusion. I refuse that. And you start to be able to see the stories that don't make sense. That's often one of the first responses when we see toxic behavior in situations, is something in us says, something isn't right here. What is going on? How could that be happening? What story are they telling themselves, right? There's something that happens, and it's your storyteller who knows something's wrong. So it's also your storyteller who can use her words to begin to craft a different potential of a culture of beings who are connected to each other and to their creativity, to earth, to compassion, and to tending the global community with our gifts. So I'm inviting every one of you to occupy the seat of your muse, to be connected to one another, whether it's this community or another community, to see the connection between your critic and your muse and do the work to unite it into one voice, to practice intentional creativity as a way to mend, recover, and be encouraged and encourage others. And then to be with this exploration of your own identity, consciousness, and sense of place on earth. What if you are the storyteller we're looking for? What if you have a narrative that's going to shift culture? You don't know if you are or you aren't. But if you treat yourself as if you are, as if you actually matter, as if we cannot tell this story without you, the way you begin to regard your own identity begins to change. The way you adapt in community when there's a challenge begins to change. The way that you ask questions of yourself and others begins to change, because there is a story And the dominant story has been operating for far too long. But in order to change it, we don't just go back in and spend all of our time dismantling that only. We actually create a new story alongside of it, because the muse needs nourishment as we're going. You must tend to yourself, those of you who are activists and advocates and exploring allyship in the different areas that you're working. Tend the muse. Let her speak a story through you, and you will have enough nourishment to meet the call of the day, because you can see it inside of a larger story. You can begin to see challenges as reference points for growth. You can begin to see signs to turn back as an invitation to know you're onto something really powerful, and you just stay with it. You just lean in and you keep reaching for something more loving than before, more beautiful than you could imagine. You don't lose sight of an unfolding story of which you are an integral part. And I thank you from my heart for coming to be with us, to have this experience, to be together, and to explore what does it mean to have one foot in both worlds, and to stand solidly right where you are and occupy your identity. And so for our completing ritual, I invite you to stand right where you are. You can adjust your camera a little bit or go off camera, whatever you want. Just stand right where you are. And allow yourself to just stretch a little bit as you come into your body. Getting up out of the seat of the muse and just stretching. And now take a position of personal power. The philosopher Michel Foucault talked about something called biopower. And he said that's body power. And he said that over generations, one of the ways that misogyny has taken place is to actually change the shape of the body of the woman and how she's standing. Isn't that just wacky? Thousands of years. So what is a position of power for you? And just to feel the feeling of your feet on the ground, the motion in your hips, or if you need to stay seated, just to wiggle around a little bit. Is your position solid, or is it has some fluidity? Is there some movement or some flow? It's for you, a position of power, biopower for you. As you just be with the experience that we just had. And raising your head on your neck and stretching yourself up as tall as you've ever been in this moment. As you invite your own self to be as present as possible. And to become clear with your one voice, which has access to all the spectrum of information and voices and parts within you, but that you have access to your one voice. And when you need to unite that voice, you say your magic word, so repeat your magic word to yourself. And what if right now, in the privacy of your own studio, you choose to become the storyteller of your own life and experience? Would you do that? If you want to, it's here. And you can just pat yourself on the heart and on your belly just in some way and just saying, I'm going to be the one telling this story from now on. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm going to be that one. I will be that one. And when I don't know, I'll check with the other storytellers. When I need to make a big decision or I'm afraid, I'll check with other storytellers. Because my story is happening together. I'm connected. I am the storyteller of my own experience, and I always have been, but now I'm much more conscious and can be intentional about it. Beautiful breath as you just allow yourself to just settle into the fullness of the moment. wonderful. And just allowing ourselves to breathe as we complete this circle together in community. I'm so grateful that you're here. So I just invite you to move from our cafe space solidly back into your studio space. You're where you are, I'm where I am, all of us is where we are. We are grounded and embodied and connected. Here at Musea, we say there are many muses everywhere intentional creativity is practiced. It's a musea. It's a place where the muses are. There are many muses, many hands, many lands, many voices, and all of you are a part of that beautifulness. Thank you so much to the team and everyone who made this possible, and all of you who signed up to join us. We so look forward to our future adventures together. We're only 18 years into a 100-year plan of a legacy for our community. So we invite you, if you feel called, to continue on in your experience with us. So good. Oh, I'm seeing you. I'm loving your hand motions toward me. I'm sending love back to you. Thank you so much, everybody. Bless you.